One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of these has been the use of repetition, but often it's the use of repetition with a slight change every time. Abraham Lincoln, for instance, will say the same thing several times, but you won't notice that he's saying the same thing several times because he reworks and reworks the language. Often Martin Luther King will introduce a concept with the same phrase again and again. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have this. If I had sneezed, this wouldn't have happened. If I had sneezed, that wouldn't have happened. So it gets the audience into a state of recognizing a pattern and realizing that with each shift in the language, it grows in kind of its breadth and its scope. All the time. Yes. And I'm not as scared as I used to be. And one of the things that it's, I think, worth noting is that fear and excitement are essentially the same emotion. Physically, they manifest themselves in the same way. Your heartbeat gets faster, your glands sweat, your breath gets more shallow. If you process it in your thinking as being fear, then you get more and more nervous in addition to that, and you get scared. If you process it as being excitement, then if you tell yourself, I'm just excited about this, usually you're excited about something in which you're anticipating a great result. Something really adventurous and amazing is going to happen through the course of doing what you're about to do. So I try to kind of rework my thinking that in a way that gives me more confidence. Yes?
How long does it take you to remember each?
For something like this, for like a 1-hour program, I might work on it for about 6 months. And then it'll take another 6 months beyond that to actually kind of know it instinctively in myself. In my acting textbook, I've written 3 chapters on memorization. And for me, memorization is not a cognitive process so much. It's not so much about thinking as it is about the mechanics of kinesthetics, of movement. My mouth remembers the words even better than my brain does. It's like speaking the Pledge of Allegiance. You probably can speak each of you can probably speak the Pledge of Allegiance without ever engaging your brain, because your mouth knows it better than your head does. Or it's like, it's like typing. You don't think each letter that you are going to hit. Say, okay, the K I hit with my right index finger. Let me move that to where I think the K is. The muscles of your hand know where they're going better than your brain can process them. So for me, speaking is a very similar experience, is once I get past, after that first 6 months, I might learn it cognitively, but by the time the year is up of really kind of working on a piece, then my mouth knows it better than my brain does. A good example of this is when I don't remember the exact word, and I can't bring myself to speak it. Usually the word that comes to my mind is a word that sounds almost identical to that particular word. So my mouth wants to make the shape that would make that word, but it just hasn't remembered with exactitude what that particular word is. But a given speech, an individual speech, I might be able to knock down in the course of a week. But what I find is that most every actor at some point or another has said aloud, but I've had this all memorized at home. And that's because when you memorize something at home, you're not only memorizing the words on the piece of paper, but you're also memorizing the environment of your home. You're memorizing where the windows are, and the door, and the bed, and the walls, and the colors, and just the way your sound reflects against the 4 walls. But then you go into rehearsal, and suddenly not only is it a much larger, much different space, but there are also people staring back at you at the same time. So that suddenly what you knew in the peace and quiet of your home has gotten driven out of your head. So part of the process of memorizing is memorizing in all sorts of environments, so that eventually nothing can knock you off from what you have to say from one thing to another. Someone over here can be playing with his shoe, and I can still maintain remembering what the next words are that I have to say, somehow. Yes?
So Mark may have told you that our sophomores are writing speeches they're going to deliver late in January. And so I don't know what you might comment on in terms of writing a speech. It may be anything from personal to historical, current issue, current events. So any advice you have for writing as well as practicing and delivering?
Okay. I believe in writing about what you know, and writing about things that you think of in the way that you think of them. Because you are the only one who thinks of those things in the particular way that you think of them. And so you are ultimately going to use words that nobody else would likely use. If you are trying to imitate the way someone else writes, you will often wind up with something that you don't very much believe in yourself. And so I think it's very important to address things in the very peculiar way, even though it may sound stupid to you, because nobody else talks that way, or nobody else seems to think that way, to express what you really think, to get out, onto paper what you're thinking. And then in terms of delivery and performance, everyone has different issues. When I was first starting out, as an actor, I did not know what to do with my hands. They wanted to fly all over the place, or I wanted to put them in my pockets and keep them there, or I wanted to cross my arms and hold my hands in place there, or and I had a director who would keep telling me, get your hands out of your pockets, stop crossing your arms, and then the next thing I would do would be to hold them behind my back. And what that does, every time you do something like that, is it cuts off your live energy. When I do this in a scene with someone, it really informs the audience that I am not about to take any action with my hands in the course of this argument that we may be having. But when I have my hands at the ready and available to express myself, then there's a tension there that wouldn't otherwise be there. I remember this first time that I performed, I would, try to do all these things, and eventually the director would say, just leave your hands at your sides. And I would put my hands at my sides, and I would grasp the seams of my trousers in order to prevent my hands from flying and flailing about wildly. And it must have looked insane to the people who were looking at me, because I would express myself through this kind of waggling of the torso as I would go on and on. So the trick, I think, is to become comfortable inside your own skin to the point that you can stand at the ready, not tensing up, not closing yourself off, and be present with other human beings, and to look into their eyes and not freak out about the fact that they are looking back at you, and not worried about what it is in terms of the mechanics of what you are doing, so much as concerning yourself with getting across the point that you're trying to make. Yes, sir?
Do you find that you become numb to the power on speeches?
I become numb when I'm rehearsing them, but they grow alive when I'm in front of an audience. And when I'm there with an attentive audience that is kind of feeding off the energy, I'm reminded of almost the very first time that I read the speech, and how powerful it was to me when I first kind of touched base with these words and the speaker and the cause that that speaker was trying to celebrate and to advance. And so when I feel the audience responding to that, when the audience realizes that the emotions and the ideas and the causes that these speakers were advocating are still with us today, every bit as much, when, for instance, Franklin Roosevelt says, there must be an end to speculation with other people's money. Suddenly the world of Franklin Roosevelt and our world come together in an immediate way, and people recognize that the issues that were so strong during the Great Depression are back with us again today, and suddenly they forget that Franklin Roosevelt was talking 70, 80 years ago. And it's almost like suddenly we wish that message could get out there today. There's an immediacy there that any thoughts of the fact that, you know, Socrates was speaking 3,000 years ago disappear for us, because we realize there's a live human being again.
Here, one last question. Anyone?
Oh, sorry, you're in the dark there.
Sorry.
Yes.
If you're going to add a speech by a woman, what speech is that?
I just memorized one by Emma Goldman that's called "What is Patriotism?", in which she argues that patriotism in and of itself tends to be the roots of warlike ambitions through mankind. That we imagine ourselves all living on little spots surrounded by an iron gate that go to war with all of the other little spots around the globe. And because a lot of the speeches that are generally regarded as the greatest speeches of all time are speeches that were given before some great battle or before some war to encourage men to go out and fight, I felt that it would be good to have some balance there, A, with a woman's voice, and B, someone who could advocate as effectively for peace as a lot of other people advocate for war. And so that's the next one I'm introducing to the collection. There's also one by, I believe it's Emmeline Pankhurst, who was a suffragette who has a couple of very famous speeches as well. So those are on the list of speeches kind of going into the Rolodex. Thank you very much.